My name is Lucina Rubio. I am from Jalisco, Mexico.
Hi, my name is Miguel Nano and I'm from Lima, Peru.
My name is Esmarcia Buter. I am from Brazil.
Hi, I'm Aaron Bao. I'm from China.
Every year, millions of people come to the U.S. in search of a better future and the desire to make their dreams come true. Upon arrival, many quickly realize that not knowing the English language presents a challenge in their day-to-day lives and long-term goals. In this documentary, 4 former students will share how Cuesta College's English as a Second Language program helped them not give up on the dream that they came here for.
When I was in Peru, I was a student, and I came to the U.S. when I was 19, right after I finished high school. Why did I choose to come to the U.S.? Because my dad was living here, and he decided me to give me a shot, to give me an opportunity to live in a different place other than home. So one of the first impressions that I had when I came to the U.S. was people, and everything else was different in every single way. Nothing was like home. As a matter of fact, I felt homesick the first day that I was in United States, and that was a big challenge for me in the beginning. And then as the day passes by, I start thinking, what do I want to do with my life? If I want to work, if I want to go to school, or if I want to do something else, or maybe I should go back home because maybe I don't fit here. One of the reasons why I wanted to come to Cuesta College is because I wanted to have a better education, which means that I'm going to have a better quality of life, and also get a better job and achieve the dreams that I had when I was a kid. One of the dreams that I had when I was a kid is to have a house, travel around the world, become a salesman.
Yo llegué a Estados Unidos en el 2006. Yo tenía mi negocio en Baja California Norte, pero me di cuenta que no estaba satisfecha conmigo misma, que quería algo mejor para mí y para mi familia, y me vine para acá buscando el sueño americano.
I came to the US 5 years ago, and in Brazil I was teacher. I really enjoy to be teacher in Brazil. But here in US, I have more opportunity. My first impression the US is this: I find my paradise here. I really find my paradise. Here I find it peaceful, I find friends too, I find time for myself. In Brazil I was too busy, and here I can figure out myself.
I came to United States in 2010. My career in China is a physician. That's also the nephrologist that cope with the kidney disease. And I came to United States because I could let my child have a higher education in US. And the first impression of the US, that's the sky so blue, that's a very clean.
On the first few days of class, I've noticed that my students are often very nervous, and it's because they're afraid that their language ability isn't going to be as strong as their other classmates, or that their teacher will not think that their language is strong enough to be in that particular class. They feel afraid to make mistakes because they don't want other people to make fun of them, or just take that risk and be comfortable in making a mistake, because maybe they haven't yet learned that making a mistake is the way that you learn.
At the beginning, I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't know anybody, and that that pushed me to start to be more socialized.
My first day in ESL, I was so scared. I think this class was not for me. I am old. I saw only young people there. I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? But I was determined. I was determined to continue.
When I first came to the class, I feel some interesting like the students from many countries. They have different culture here, and the teachers very kind. But I still feel a little stress and nervous here because of my listening and speaking skills is no good. Sometimes I cannot understand what others says, so that really got me nervous.
The major challenges that I see for my students are, number one, time. The ability to make the time when the majority of the students that I have in my classes all have jobs and families, and so school actually comes in number 3. So the difficulty is making the time to do homework and study because the language is so difficult. And some students haven't developed the study skills to be able to plan their time so that they can put in the extra effort to study before class and on the weekend or after class, or when everyone else has gone to sleep and the home is quiet. Students that I've seen at Cuesta who are very successful are the ones who plan their time so that they can study a certain number of hours a week depending on the level of difficulty of the course. The higher levels require more hours of study outside of class, and those students understand that in order to be successful they'll have to put in that time. So they successfully plan those hours into their schedule so that they can make the time to study. Another characteristic that I see of my successful students are they ask questions when they don't understand. Anybody who has had me as their teacher will tell you that I love questions because it shows that your mind is attempting to engage in the lesson and that you're trying to build on what you know. Another successful trait that I see of students who make it through ESL and onward is students who use the resources that they have available to them. So for example, your teacher has hours where he or she is in the office before or after class waiting for you to come in so that they can help you. It's a really, really good student who's going to make the extra time to come in and ask questions about things they don't understand, their writing, the grammar, the speaking, the vocabulary, whatever it is. And to have that direct one-on-one help from the instructor is really powerful and helpful to the students.
And one of the difficulties that I had when I was taking classes is that I had to work at 3 different jobs to pay my bills, to pay my car payments, because I had to get a car in order to work and in order to go to school. Transportation is very important. So that was a very, I had a very heavy load work schedule, but I dedicated myself to make time to go to school at nights and practice English as much as I could. So the way that I resolved that is I schedule my time every day, and on my free time, which was Sunday and most of the afternoon on Saturdays, I watch movies in English, listen to music in English, read as much as I could, and that helped me a lot.
One of the biggest things that I've seen in counseling with our students is that they feel an impatience when it comes to wanting to transition to mainstream courses, or when they're looking at a career like wanting to get into nursing, and they start realizing how much more English they have to take in order to be able to take the nursing class or the automotive class, because they have to be able to read the textbooks. And in the planning process, sometimes it looks like they're not going to be able to get there till 2017 or 18 or 19, and they just feel like they want to give up. In regards to the personal issues that I see when I'm working with students in the therapeutic setting, I've come across students who feel a lot of maybe homesick, maybe they're away from their spouses or their children. And so on top of trying to learn the English, they're dealing with their personal issues of feeling lonely or feeling separate from. And so in therapy, we try to work through those. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of students who maybe are not being supported by family members in regards to being told to, yeah, go to school. On the contrary, maybe the kids are saying, no, don't go, you have to be gone again. And so the students are feeling some guilt about leaving the family and being away in the night, or having to study and not be able to give them as much attention. So that's things that we work through in therapy. Jealousy is a big issue too, because a lot of times, you have the wife or the husband, saying, where are you gonna go and who are you meeting there? So we run into situations like that we can, a lot of times in family therapy, build the trust and the confidence in one another to believe and to trust that the partner is actually doing what they're doing, which is learning English and being able to get into a higher paying job or preparing to get into a career that they really want.
My big challenge was to speak, because pronunciation was very difficult for me. When I try to talk some word and the people understand different words, different means what I say, I feel so uncomfortable. When I have trouble, especially for speaking and listening, my teachers and the tutoring in laboratory, they help me a lot. I feel more comfortable when I was in laboratory talking with tutoring, because it's very helpful.
The successful students will be able to use other resources for themselves, such as going to the Success Center, knowing when the tutors are there, using the extra time the tutors have to help them understand their lessons, to go to the computer lab and know the software, know the websites to go to practice their English. Successful ESL students also really try, when they're outside of class, to engage in speaking to native speakers so that they have the practice and they're not afraid when someone else walks up to them and tries to start a conversation. They will talk to their neighbors. They will speak to people at work in English. They will listen to an English radio station. They know that it will help them to watch television with subtitles or movies with subtitles so that they can read underneath whatever is being spoken and have the visual of the language as well.
Las dificultades que yo tuve fueron la transportación y el no tener trabajo. Como no tenía trabajo, no tenía para la gasolina, pero de alguna forma le buscaba y salía adelante. Yo estudiaba fuera de casa todo el tiempo, fuera de las clases. Antes de entrar a la clase, me venía 1 o 2 horas antes, y cuando llegaba a la casa estudiaba también en la computadora. Estaba leyendo el periódico, oyendo las noticias, la televisión en inglés, y cuando tenía un problema que no encontraba ayuda de alguna forma, acudía con las profesoras antes de entrar a clase y también después. Ellas me ayudaron mucho, fui su consentida. Me ayudaron bastante las profesoras. Eso me motivó bastante para seguir adelante con las clases.
Because I must work to support my family, and the company I work there have busy work, so I have to work overtime. So it is difficult for me to find a time and to cope with the class, like reading, writing, and prepare for test. So that was a challenge for me, and because I have difficult speaking, and so I try to talk with teachers, and the teachers is very kind and patient with me. They also taught me how to express also even the pronunciation. And I'd like watch TV after school and listening to the radio here. So that's helped me a lot.
How I felt after I finished my ESL classes? Well, for one reason I felt happy because they gave me a certificate, which made me feel very proud. And I knew that that was one step closer to achieve my dreams. So after finishing my ESL classes, I kept on taking more classes, advanced classes, and the last class that I took was public speech, which it turned out to be a great class because I learned a lot. I overcome a lot of fears that I had talking in front of people. So that turned out to be a great class for me. Now, what I'm doing right now, I feel that I've achieved more of my goals because when I started taking ESL classes, I wanted to have a job as a salesman and travel all over the world. Now I work at Andros Engineering, where I am the sales manager for Latin America, and I travel to Mexico. I've been in Mexico, I've been in Peru, I've been in Costa Rica. I travel all over the United States, and I really love what I'm doing right now. And I'm really, really, really thankful to every teacher that I had in ESL in every single class, because I feel that they have been part of my success.
Yo empecé con una casa, limpiando una casa por 4 años, porque no hablaba inglés. Después de esos 4 años que la persona se dio cuenta que yo ya hablaba inglés, él me recomendó con muchas personas. Ahora mi negocio está grande. Y para mí fue muy satisfactorio que un día la persona que yo duré 4 años hasta entonces limpiándole su casa me dijo: tú eres una persona muy importante porque eres una persona bilingüe. Ya ni nosotros que somos americanos somos bilingües y no somos tan importantes como tú porque no hablamos español. Mientras estaba estudiando inglés, también estudié en Culinary Art y también estudié computadora. Ahorita estoy enfocada en agarrar mi GED y también estoy haciendo una cita para hablar con un consejero académico para estudiar una carrera corta.
I'm work at applied technology company, and my work need me to communicate with each other, with colleague or supervisor. I also should write reports to my supervisors. So ESL really helped me a lot. My daughter lives and studies here. She'll graduate this summer, so she will go to college this fall.
I feel so great, so happy because I have the challenge and later I overcome. I look back, I said, oh my gosh, thank you, because I did it. I was able to do, and I know everyone is able. And my life now is much better. I can speak, I can make more money because I have a better job than I have before. But the most important that I find myself. I really enjoy take care of all the people like I'm doing now. After I took ESL, I was able to take CNA classes, and I took. Now I have my own patient. I do not work for hospital or private company. I work by myself, but I really enjoy take care of these people. They are so kind, and I have more friends now. And also what I really like to say is that about the counseling and the workshop that I did. They encouraged me to take the CNA class, because if I did not go there, I didn't know that CNA class, I was able to take this class. And it was very important what counseling said for me, the orientation that they give me, and the workshop give me a lot of opportunity to see different kind of job that I take, that I decided to do. Then I decided to change my life. Then I find myself, I really love to take care of people. Before I was children, now was old people. And to be caregiver for elderly people, I can do everything for them because I am able to do, because I learn. And the Cuesta College gave this opportunity. And not only Cuesta, but the whole team that I find in Cuesta College. For a while, Cuesta College was my whole family, my whole hope, my whole hope, my whole faith was here, because Cuesta College gave me a lot of opportunity for me to be who I am now. I am so thankful for that.
Cuesta College changed my life.
Cuesta College changed my life.
Cuesta College really changed my life.
Cuesta College changed my life.
Congratulations, ESL students, for your efforts and achievements. For the instructors, administrators, and ESL staff at Cuesta College, it is both a privilege and an honor to be a part of your success. But although we are part of it, it is you who is making this happen. You recognized a need, you set a goal, and you took action. You are an example not only for your family members and friends, but also for those of us at Cuesta College who see the seeds of determination, hard work, and endurance that you are sowing and that will soon reap a great harvest. Felicidades, estudiantes de ESL, por sus esfuerzos y sus logros. Para los instructores, administradores y el personal de ESL, es un honor y un privilegio ser parte de tu éxito. Pero aunque formamos parte, eres tú quien está logrando esto. Tú reconociste una necesidad, tú te propusiste una meta y tú tomaste acción. Tú eres un ejemplo no solo para tus familiares y amistades, pero también para las personas de Cuesta College que ven las semillas de determinación, esfuerzo y perseverancia que estás sembrando y que pronto darán una gran cosecha.